Before you do any cutting on a wax form, you have to measure your stones. Measure the depth, not only the width and diameter, but always measure from the table to the cullet. In this particular cubic zirconia, the measurements are 4.4, let's say 4.5 millimeters from the cullet to the table. Once that is done, measure out the thickness of the wax. That is, suppose that it's going to be at 6.5 millimeters or 6.4. These the numbers are going to be in your mind right from the get-go. You have to make sure you've got enough allowance for filing and trimming, and if possible, shrinkage in the silver or making a rubber mold. These are the numbers you have to know ahead of time before you start sawing with the wax carving saw blade. Let us now start working on making this wax form. What I'm going to do now is get my scribe dividers, call it what you want, and figure out the total distance. This is the important part now. How long will that cubic zirconia trio be? I've measured now ahead of time how the dividers will be just above, or I should say just a bit beyond the 3 stones. To put this more into a more visual thing for you, they are going to be extending the overall length of the stones. I've measured it now with my digital calipers. As you can see, I always want to make sure with everything now with measurements. This is very critical in carving. I may want to go up to 21 millimeters, allow for filing, to making sure that the sides are parallel with my, now I'm going to be using a tri-square. So now we're going to be working on 21 millimeters, allowing for filing. Very easy process. So I'm going to get my piece of wax. I'm going to come down and this is not going to work. I'm going to do something first. I'm going to get my file, because there were so many lines in here. I gotta see where the divider is making its mark. It's all blending in. So I'm going to get my very coarse file and start to put these stones away. I don't need them right now. I'm going to file it. It's a bit messy, but that's the way this job is. Turning it around. So this way I know that the surface is going to be flat. As you can see that some of the lines are slowly being removed. Turning around, quarter turn. Each time you do the filing, make sure you don't foul your fingers. Go to the finer side. Just smooth it out. Get my paintbrush and just remove all this dirt, this wax. As you can see, there is a bit of a difference now between the rough cutting when you buy the wax to now you got the smooth surface. Now with my dividers, I'm just going to position myself a bit better. That's all I need to do. Now you can see where the length of the pendant will be. That is going to be the 21 millimeters. you can see now two very faint lines on the wax. They're so faint, even I may have troubles figuring out where the length is. So what I'm going to do now is get my graver and cut into the wax to make it more noticeable. I'm going to cut deep, because when I'm doing some sawing with the blade, I don't want to make a mistake. Look how nice and deep it is now. I'm going to go to the other side, barely noticeable. So when I do my cutting, it's going to be easy to spot the edge. I just measured the overall width corresponding to the actual pendant I have. I'm going to transfer that now to the wax form. Just going to draw, scribe two lines. Again, very noticeable, very faint. So I'm going to scribe it a bit deeper. One simple cut. And we're going to do the other side. Just made a small scratch over here. Now I'm going to extend it right to the end. This wax is very easy to use. It's good for carving. Now you can see the overall length and the width. Now decide is where is the center of this pre-cut pendant. I used my digital calipers and I measured out the center. It is now 10.29. And I just scribe it in the center, and here it is over there. This is where the center of the stone will be, the center of the culet. That will be now, let's get closer now. This is where the center of the stone will be in regards to the center of the pendant. That is my foundation measurement. I'll make a little score. Then what I'm going to do now is, using my dividers, here's one, and here it is over there. Make a little score in the wax. That is where the second and third stone will be. I now have my handpiece, holding it very securely away from my fingers, right through the wax. Number two. This is not too critical if you're off by 1/4 of a millimeter. Now I'm going to go to the back, make sure it's pierced through. I do the final using of the saw blade, just grind it out a bit more. I'm going to decide which is going to be the front and which is going to be the back. I'm going to do now the filing again on the back side. Get rid of all these serrated lines. They look not nice. So I'm going to put the stones away. I'm just going to clean up the area where the pendant's going to be. Go to the coarse side. Turn it around. Holding it securely with my fingers. Go to the smooth side. And we're nearly finished. You can see now how nice and clean it looks. What I will do now is go over the lines again on both sides, making sure when I'm using a saw blade, it doesn't come in on an angle. I don't want that. What I just did just now is get some cyanoacrylate or crazy glue, and I glued the stones onto the wax. This way, if I want to measure out anything before I do any sawing or carving or drilling, I know exactly where the stones are going to be beforehand. I know now that when I do my using my saw blade, I'm going to cut on the outside of that line, and down here again on the outside, never cutting on the right on the line. This way I could file it, and now you can see why I prefer to have the stones glued temporarily, of course, on the wax. So I have to make any adjustments regarding the length or the width, I can do so without taking the stones and measuring it and dropping them and making a real mess of things. Underneath, I drilled and made a small scribe where the saw blade will be. No matter if I saw blade it this way or here, I know where the outline will be on the pendant. So now I'm going to remove the stones and start the actual cutting. Why should I be using a specific kind of saw blade for cutting wax? If you can see this saw blade, it's far different from your 3/0, 2/0, or even my favorite 4/0 saw blade. It is basically a twisted wire with teeth all the way around the coil, all the way around the twisted wire. And this is just fantastic for cutting only wax. And what I'm going to do now is start the cutting process. I'm cutting outside the line, blowing the wax away because I can't see that line. For the specific filming, I'm not holding it properly, but you get the gist of it. Get it, and I just break it off. Here it is. As you can see, that I did not cut right to that line. Again, in the back, it's pretty well away from the line. Now what I'm going to do is cut the other side. Blade, come in and break it off. Now I've saved the length and the width for the filing. If I want to avoid any more filing, maybe I'll just touch it up a bit more. I'll just cut this off a bit. I'm coming in on an angle. There. This is going to be a lot easier method of holding the wax, the file, better than holding it and scraping your fingers. I don't want you to start filing your skin. This is what happened down there. So my other method is hold it securely, hold it very tight. This way. Come right up to the edge of that line. And now I'm going to go to the other side. Simply, it's a bit difficult. It may start rocking. So you got to make sure you're holding it tight. Hold it at the base. Don't hold it on here because you can start rocking. Examine it all the time. it's not really flat. There you can see it's high here, high there, and a bit low in the center. I'm going to get my file and just touch it up a bit more using the smoother side. I want to have the sides making sure that they're nice and 90-degree angle. That's why I suggested getting hold of a tri-square. And I can see now that there is no space in any of the corners. It's all sitting nice, but this is the one that's causing me a bit of grief. It's rocking, and if you can see it, it's not sitting right. So what I did was I marked it with the magic marker. So when I start the filing, I won't file the wrong end. It's something for, a little shortcut, just to make sure that you know what you're working on. Now I'm going to get my file. Be very careful. Don't let it rock. On the back of the pendant, I'm going to cut an Azure or a little pattern. I don't want to have just simple holes like this. I want to make a little ornamental design. So I'm using my burr, cutting through, right through the wax. That's all I need. Now you can see something from the little holes. Now, how am I going to make a little Azure cut? I'm going to get my graver, my onglet graver number 2. I'm going to cut corners just like this. Like what I'm doing. Come around again. See some corners being cut. Normally I would do this on my bench peg, but for the video I'm just holding it in my hand. See the little X? Looks like it's the start of a little square hole. So I'm going to make a square cut, a square hole out of a round hole. Going to get my flat graver. One end to the other. This wax is fantastic to work with. You can carve very nicely. Cutting away all that round part of the hole. Making it straight as I can. And here you can see how it's starting. Now I'm going to do the top part. I'm going to show you what I do next. Keep quiet because of concentration. I'm using a flat graver, Glardin number 12 or Muller number 40. See how it looks. Now get my onglet graver again. Cut a little border around the squares. Stop just beyond it. See that little line? Cutting a straight line. going to cut a bit deeper, making sure that the line is straight, not curved. The first cut is only the guide. See how it looks. Now, in between, I'm going to cut another line representing pseudo square stones. What I will do now is just extend the corners. That's all I need to do, nothing else. Now comes the easy stuff. Getting my large round 3-toothed burr, and I'm going to cut straight through. Going from one hole to the other. Going right through. Hold the handpiece differently. How far down do I go? Well, I'll show you right here. I measured with my dividers little lines corresponding to where the bezel is on the silver pattern. Now make sure that I don't go any lower than that line. What I'm going to do next is open up the bottom of the hole to accommodate the culet of the stone. Just go in a bit. Just on the top of the hole. And here on the sides, straighten it out. If you're not sure about doing that, you can use your little file and just go along the inside edge. Not too much, because this is where stone has to sit, and you can't have stones sitting in a hole. Great. That stone has nice little overhang. What you can see now is a rounded groove. I don't want that at all. Remember, we're putting in square stones, and round and square do not make a happy camper. So I'm going to get my small blade. I'm going to cut in to make it almost like a square. Get my flat graver again. Cut out the corners. What I'm going to be doing now is to increase the thickness of the channel wall. Instead of doing it when this silver is made, I'm going to do it in a wax form. I'm going to build up the inside channel wall, so when I get the silver cast, I can make a nice proper bearing. I'm doing this in stages. As I finish one side of the wax, it's drying or cooling down, then I'm building it up again. I'm using a different color wax so I can distinguish the new wax from the original. Doing this over a couple of times, about 3 layers. It's a lot easier to do it in the wax than it is in the silver or gold. You wouldn't have to start soldering or applying any extra metal. And when I finish this, I give it now to my caster. He casts it in the metal that I want, namely 0.925 silver. If there are any blemishes on the wax, I can check it now and go over anything I wish. So as of right now, this job is done. Here's a good idea. For pre-cutting a bearing, instead of doing it in silver, you can start the preliminary drawing of the bearing in wax by using your favorite high-speed steel number 1 onglet, and proceed to make a small line in the wax just below the surface of the wall. And look how easy it is. Can you imagine if you had to do this rough cut in metal? Now when you get the silver or gold made, all you do is get your butt burr and your undercutting burr and continue on. Go to the other side, just below the surface. You cut this preliminary line. Of course, it has to be the same depth on either side of the channel wall. So now, when you get this cast and the metal of your choice, all you do is cut it. But the whole idea is to get this groove just the same depth all along the channel wall. If you make a mistake, well, no problem. You just put some hot wax over it and start again. But there's another idea for you. Don't cut through. Stop right here. Why? Because you're going to slide the stones in. Instead of having a groove or opening on both sides, you just stop it right there. Safety measure, preventing the stone from going out. But it's not going to. You know why? It's because the culet of the stone is resting inside these 3 spots. So no way is that kind of stone going to really slide in. But you don't want to have big hunks of holes both sides. You don't need that. Let's suppose that you have a wax that you're ready to give to your caster, and you find some little blemishes on it. You can get your emery paper, Norton number 2, and you're just going to file the wax. How easy is that? A few runs on it and you're getting most of the marks off. Better to do it here than have it in silver or in gold. And here is it's starting to look pretty clean. Remember, this has to be in almost pristine condition before you give it to your caster, because more filing you do now will be less difficult for you to do it in the metal. Circular motion for the ends. Get your cleaner area. If you want to use more aggressive, coarser emery paper by Norton number 1, then do so. 2 is what I like to use. Now when you get your casting, then you can do your triply and your split lap polishing, and the job is done. I now have my bud burr. I'm going to start the cutting, holding my handpiece like a pencil. Why? I don't want to have a too aggressive cut. Just gently digging in to the channel, keeping it straight across. Go to the other side. Making sure that this channel is the same level from the channel wall, the groove, to the tip of the bezel. That's what I want to have done. Now, I've got that done. Now I'm going to get a round burr, the same thickness as the girdle of the stone. I want to ensure that the stone is going to be sitting correctly, with not much contact with the wall. So I'm going to get my round burr and go in a bit deeper into this channel wall, but making sure that I don't rise up too high to the top. And make 2 or 3 passes on this opening, a bit faster so I have a nice clean cut. Because the slower I go, I will have little striations in the metal, and I don't want that. So I'm almost like I'm polishing it. Go over it again, make sure it's nice. Clean enough with my brush, I can see exactly what I have. My next job now is to get my high-speed steel burr and make a little seat for the pavilion underneath the girdle of the stone. That is what I'm going to be aiming for right now. For the sake of getting this action noticed, I'm using my undercutting burr, high-speed steel burr, and I'm going to make a little bearing for the pavilion of the stone. Just going to get my flat graver to show you. I'm going to make a little flange on the bottom of the bearing cut, not in the trough, not in the bearing, but on the lower lip. So I'm going to be coming along this direction. I've used now an undercutting burr. I'm only going to use the bottom part of it, but letting the edge fit right into the bearing cut. I'm going to hold it on a slight forward action so I can get my high-speed steel, cut that groove for the pavilion. I'm not going to cut deep, I'm just going to make it so the pavilion will rest against that silver. Here you could see the bearing cut being finished. You could see also where the pavilion is going to be resting against. Both sides have been contoured out. Now I'm going to be ready for slipping in the stone. What I'm going to do is slip it in one side only. As it goes in, it stops right at that point, so it won't proceed to go beyond and fall out. It's like a little bumper. It's on both sides. And here you can see the other one. Flat metal, and here's where the bearing stops. What I've done before actually is make a little, with the round burr, made it a bit deeper, so when I start hammering over, it's not going to squeeze the corner of the stone. If it is, goodbye stone. So it comes in nice and smooth and stops right there. That's why it's imperative that you polish this after casting, clean out everywhere with the triply and then with the rouge. Because if you don't, it's impossible to polish it once the stones are in. Sometimes I get a very large burr, about a 3mm burr, round burr, and I just excavate the top rim so the pavilion corners and the stone will sit against here if necessary. But since this is a very high gallery or very high bezel, it's not warranted. Now I'm going to slide the stones in. What I'm going to do now is get my flat graver, one of many gravers I'm using, and I'm going to make a small wire bead underneath the pavilion to prevent the stones from moving while I'm starting to do the heavy-duty hammering with my reciprocating hammer. This will prevent the stones from falling out in this direction. So I'm getting my flat graver, dig in a little wire hook just underneath the pavilion of the stone. Let's just see if it works. Yes, it works. So when I do my hammering, I don't have to keep my finger or my thumb against the stones. You remember a few minutes ago I was showing you how I'm drilling groove or the channel and leaving this area untouched. So this is the reason why. I'm putting my finger against the stones and I'm pushing it, but the stones aren't going to come out the side because they're locked in as the channel has stopped being drilled. There's actually a little space here of metal, and the stones are going to be abutting against that little groove, and I can push and push. The stones aren't going to be coming out the other side. Normally I would have to hold it like this, and I can't see what I'm doing because I got two fingers holding the stones in place. Now I'm going to get my hammer, but before I do that I want to know where I'm going to be hitting. I get my magic marker or black ink pen. I'm going to mark it exactly where I want the hammer to be, because when I hit it on the black marker, it's going to be removed, then I know exactly where the contact spot is. On white silver against the white stones, there's a lot of light glare, and I can't see where the anvil will be hitting. So what I'm going to do is put this magic marker on it both sides. Then I can see exactly where I'm hitting. But I will not ever make any contact beyond that black mark. Why? Because I don't want that anvil to hit the stones and cause me a lot of grief. I'm replacing more stones and everything else, so I don't need that. Interesting demonstration of how my reciprocating hammer anvil actually looks before I'm going to be hitting the silver. You can see on here, I made the shape of a rectangle. I'm going to be hitting on the edge, the flat surface, and sometimes even the side of the face. I like to keep the front face sharp, crisp edges, smooth, highly polished. Because if there's any defects in that face of the anvil, they'll be transferred to the area I'm going to be hitting. So what I did was I found an old anvil like this, and I reshaped it on my bench grinder extensively, and this is what I have. This is my Bideco Swiss-made hammer. I've had it for now for about 25 years, and periodically I'll clean it up with a pumice wheel and or a sanding disc, and to make sure the face is nice and clean. No marks on it. So one finger's holding the stones in place. I will start my hammering right now, and I'm not going to hold it like this. I'm going to hold it broadside. Here is another way I use my reciprocating hammer. On the edge of the rectangle, I'm going to be moving the metal closer to the stone without hammering it straight on. So this is the procedure I will hold it at, about a 45-degree angle. I'm going to be digging into the metal little area and I'm going to move it over. I'm not going to collapse it or spread it or compact it. I'm going to move the metal over towards the stone. Though it's a bit of a channel in here, that's to be expected. Then I'm going to come down again on a different angle and smooth it out. Make sure that the metal is over the facets of the stones. It's not how you are using the hammer, it's the angles makes a difference. I made a very deep furrow here. I just rounded off. Then what's going to happen is that I will have a bit of an overhang. I will remove that with a sanding disc. There are going to be times when you're hammering on a ring clamp and it won't get tight. So what you have to do is take the item out of the ring clamp, put it onto a metal plate like I just did, and now the stones are tight. You can see how smooth the hammering is done because I got my hammer and I just went over very carefully all over the surface and I evened it out without filing it. This is done on this metal block I have and it worked wonders. Now I'm going to put it back into my ring clamp, start the bright cutting procedure. I'm now going to initiate the bright cutting on the inside of the bezel. I will do this before any cleanup is done. I'll do it little jabs at first. Why did I put the black marker on the metal? Because all this bright light is hard on the eyes. You see how small the face of the graver is? It's my high-speed steel Glardon number 12. Taking small jabs at it. I'll do this about 2 or 3 times. Cutting right to the edge. Here's my next cut. You can see the little shards of metal being thrown out. That's what I want to see. only cut this side, because if I do it here, I cannot see what I'm doing. See better now. Cutting right out to the edge. Now for this side, which I didn't touch, then turn the clamp around, and I come backhanded. Why did I do that? Because I start cutting not at the edge, but in a bit. Then my backhand straight. Keep rotating it. And see the edge. Finish that bright cutting. Now comes the cleanup. With a sanding disc, pumice wheel number 180 grit, and I clean up on the back end, top, the sides. Then at the very end, I'll use my pumice wheel number 1000 grit, which is like a polishing. Like how I steady my hand. My baby finger holding the handpiece. My right hand, I don't hold it against like this, or I get vibration, so I'm steadying it on my thumb. This is my baby finger test. If I don't feel anything sharp with my baby finger that has no calluses, that means everything is nice and smooth. As compared to the other side, I can feel everything going on. All the indentations from the hammer. Nice and smooth. I'm not leaning the paper disc over. Bright cutting area, I'm always leaning it a bit away. On a slight angle. Just a bit. Does not come close to the edge of the bezel. Take out all those ridges out caused by the reciprocating hammer. Let us suppose that the flat-faced pumice wheel is not flat, it's slightly angled, and has a very rounded corner. I don't like that, so I'm going to get my carbide wheel. I'm just going to shape it up again. A lot of dust. Now I'm going to come in on the surface where my paper disc was, medium grade emery disc, and come in, not letting the tip of the wheel again to touch the stone. You can see that, you can feel the edge of the metal. Always using a baby finger to see how smooth it is. Now I'm going to get my paper disc and I clean this section where there's a bit of an overhang. Here I'm using a number 1000 grit pumice wheel. It's like a polishing wheel.
сияющий свет. Сквозь хаос прыгая, превращается в игру. Словно в театре опять зажигают огни. И на сцену ведут хитроватых актеров. Они знают о том, что вокруг происходит. Но задача не у них